Hello and welcome to Nana's Crafty Home. My name is Tanya. Today's tutorial is going to show you how to complete the unicorn corner to corner scarf that you can find as a free pattern on my website. This is a very beginner friendly pattern for those of you who have never done the corner to corner technique. This is a great way to get introduced to this fabulous crochet technique. For supplies, I am using Red Heart Super Saver for my pattern. I'm using white and also grenadine for the main bodies of the scarf. You will also need just a small amount of yellow for the horn, a little bit of black for the eye, and then I used some scrap yarn that I had again in the Red Heart Super Saver, just a multitude of different colors for the mane. This is a fun, whimsical pattern. I do provide charts for the 3 sizes of my pattern. I am providing it in an adult, teen. I also have it in child and toddler sizes. So lots of different options for you size-wise, and I provide those charts on my website if you would like to look at that. I'm using a crochet hook that is recommended for the yarn that I'm using. It is a size J 6.0 millimeter hook, but if you're using another yarn, and certainly you could, this pattern gauge doesn't really make much difference. It's just going to change the size of your scarf, which is really not a problem at all. So just use a hook that matches the size yarn that you are using for the pattern. So let's go ahead and get started. So I'm just going to do a very basic how to do corner to corner crochet for those of you who've never done it before, or for those of you that haven't done it for a long time and need a refresher. To get started, just get your yarn on your hook and chain 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And I should have shown this here. I'm working from a graph, and this is pretty common. This is actually, these are my graphs from my unicorn scarf pattern, and I'm going to work off of the toddler size here. And this is very common to work corner to corner off a graph, because typically you're going to see color changes in that as well. And I will show you how to do color changes when we get to that point. But basically you're looking at your chart and you want to see how many rows over you're going to be doing, and I will show you how to stop at this section and then just continue moving up. And basically the corner to corner technique is working in boxes, and that's why you see here on your graph each of these represent one box of 3 double crochet stitches clustered together. So after we have chained our 6, we're going to work a double crochet in the 4th chain from the hook, a double crochet in the next chain, and a double crochet in the next chain. And this is my first box, or my first cluster of 3 double crochets, and then this chain 3 that we skipped here ends up being what we use to work around. So what you typically end up seeing then in your finished item is just the 3 double crochets here in the center. So we've worked that first box. Now we go to row 2, and to begin a new row, you chain 6 again. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. We do the exact same thing we just did in double crocheting in the 4th chain from the hook, double crochet in the next chain, and double crochet in the next chain. So I have another box completed. We need to fasten that box to the first box. And how that works is we have that here. We want to slip stitch into that skipped chain 3, that turning chain that we had. So we're going to pull our box up and we're going to slip stitch into the top of that chain 3. So you can see here that box is now secured on top of that other one. Now to do the second box for row 2, we're going to chain 3. 1, 2, and 3. And we're going to work 3 double crochets in that chain 3 space here. So 1, 2, and 3. So we've completed box 2. So that's why when you look at your graph here, you can see it's matching up with these boxes. I'm going to bring this down so you can see it better. So here's box 1, there's 1, there's 2, there's 2. So when we come back to do row 3, we're going to have 3 of these boxes, 3 sections of 3 double crochets. Row 4 will have 4, and so on. So each time you're increasing, you're going to increase by a count of 1 box for every row. And then when we get to the end here, this tells us when we need to start decreasing. So we're going to continue increasing through row 6 for this chart. So again, to increase, I'll pull this back out a little bit. To increase for row 3, we chain 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Double crochet in that 4th chain from the hook. And then we want to secure that to the previous box. So we're going to pull that up and we're going to do a slip stitch into the top of that chain 3. We're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, work 3 double crochets in that space where the chain 3 is at. 1, 2, and 3. Then we're going to secure it to this box here that's sitting next to it by a slip stitch. Chain 3, 1, 2, and 3, 3 double crochets in that chain 3 space here. So 1, 2, and 3. So we've completed row 3. I have 3 boxes. We've increased by 1 box. And now we're ready to go to round 4, which is another increase round. So we start our increases with chain 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. We're going to do the same thing again by double crocheting in that 4th chain from the hook, double crochet in the next chain, and double crochet in the next chain. We want to secure that box, so slip stitch into that chain 3, chain 3, 3 double crochets in that chain 3 space. Slip stitch to that next box, chain 3, double crochet 3 into that space, 1, 2 and 3, slip stitch to the top of that chain 3, chain 3, double crochet in that chain 3 space. So we've completed row 4. I have 4 boxes. We've increased by 1. So you can see here, you're really starting to see how this works. You're working on a diagonal, essentially. You're adding 1 box, 1 section of 3 double crochets, plus your chain 3 for each box. And you're going to just continue increasing in a diagonal fashion until you want to stop increasing, and you can either then stay with that same box number and continue just working up, or you can start decreasing and making a square. So we're row 5, we want to increase again. So to increase, we chain 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, double crochet in that 4th chain from the hook, double crochet in the next chain, double crochet in the next chain. We want to secure that to the next box, so slip stitch, chain 3, 3 double crochets in that space, slip stitch, chain 3, 3 double crochets, slip stitch, chain 3, 3 double crochets. Slip stitch, chain 3, and 3 double crochets. So I've completed row 5. Moving on to row 6, which is another increase row. So chain 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, double crochet in that 4th chain from the hook. Slip stitch to secure here. Chain 3, 3 double crochets. Slip stitch, chain 3 and 3 double crochets. Slip stitch, chain 3, 3 double crochets. Slip stitch, chain 3, 3 double crochets, slip stitch, chain 3, and 3 double crochets here. Okay. So we've completed row 6. Now we know from our graph that we're working here that we are not going to be increasing to a 7th box over here. So we want to stop increasing and just continue going up with that same number of boxes across our row for the rest of this graph. So when you get to a place where you're going to want to stop increasing, you would not want to chain 6 at this point. What you're going to do is you're going to turn your work. And here, of course, this is where we typically, when we're increasing, we would chain 6 and work another box. That box would then sit on top of this box for that increase. We don't want to do that, so we're going to slip stitch into each of these stitches here, and then slip stitch into that chain 3 that we normally would for to secure it when we make a new box. And so now we're ready to come back this pass and work that next row with a chain 3. So chain 3, 1, 2, and 3, and then work 3 double crochets in that chain 3 space, slip stitch into that chain 3, go ahead and chain 3, 3 double crochets, slip stitch, chain 3 double crochets, slip stitch, chain 3, 3 double crochets, slip stitch, chain 3, 3 double crochets, slip stitch, chain 3, 3 double crochets. Okay, so what did that do? Let's take a look at that. So we stopped increasing, remember? So now we're moving up instead of out like we do with an increase. So now what happens is, as long as we're not increasing or decreasing, we are going to stay with the same number of boxes across our row. So this was row 7. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And as long as we continue going back and forth without increasing or decreasing, we're going to continue to have 6 boxes for every row. Now, we're at the top, and we want to increase because we want to increase going taller. So we would chain 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Double crochet in that 4th chain from the hook. Double crochet in the next. And double crochet in the next. Slip stitch, chain 3, 3 double crochets. Continue working that on down. So we've worked our 6 boxes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We know we're at the end of our row. Here, we're even. So again, we don't want to increase. We're going to slip stitch to the top of that chain 3 as we always would, but instead of doing our chain 6 and increasing a box, we're going to turn our work and do a slip stitch into each of these stitches. Slip stitch into that, top of that chain 3, and then chain 3, 3 double crochets. I have completed row 15 of my pattern here and my graph. And when you look at the graph here, you can see that the last row of white is row 15. So when we get to row 16 here, we need to change our color to the pink color. And that entire row, as you work down, you can see every one of those is pink. So this is an easy, very simple color change. We won't need to carry any colors. We'll be able to drop our white off completely. But in order to change for that first box, what we would typically do, of course, here at the beginning, we would increase because we're getting taller in our pattern. So I would want to pull in that pink color at the end of my last double crochet of that last box before I work that chain 6. So go ahead and bring in your color pink. Chain 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Work your double crochet in that 4th chain from the hook. Double crochet in the next, and double crochet in the next. Slip stitch to the top of that next chain 3, and really just essentially continue working the pattern exactly the same way. The only difference is you're working with a new color. So when we look at our graph, we're going to need to work several rows of our pink. So we're going to look at our graph and we're going to work rows 16 through row 42 all in pink. And when we get to row 43, we're going to change back to our white here. So go ahead and continue working each of these rows, only increasing at the beginning as you continue to get taller, and then we continue just working up with 6 boxes of each color here. Each row will be just 6 boxes as we move up this pattern. So I've completed row 42 with my pink, and based on my graph, row 42 is my last row of pink here, so I need to change back to my white color to start row 43. And of course, you know, we're not increasing, and so we're turning our work. We don't want to switch to our new color yet. We want to go ahead and work that slip stitch into these end stitches. And then when we get to slip stitch into that chain 3, that's when I will bring in my new color. So go ahead and pull in your white. And we will go ahead and continue on with that pattern, working each row in the white. And let's take a look at my graph. So my graph shows here that I will have 1, 2, 3, 4 rows more going up. Once I've completed 4 additional rows in the white, I'm going to stop increasing up. I'm going to then start decreasing each row by one until we get to the end here. So I'm going to go ahead and complete these 4 additional rows of white, and when I come back I'm going to show you how to start decreasing to close off and finish your scarf. So now that we've completed row 46, we know that we are no longer going to be increasing our scarf. We're no longer going to be taller every row. We want to begin decreasing each row as we work the rest of our scarf. So for row 47 here, we know based on my graph that I'm only going to end up with 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. 1 block fewer than what I worked for row 46. So I'm working from down here, starting row 47. So we will again work that in the same fashion that we have for the previous rows, where we would slip stitch into the end. Okay. So we've worked 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 blocks. That is how many we're supposed to have for row 47. So we know we aren't going to want to do another block on the top here, which of course would have increased this height of this scarf. So we're going to go ahead and slip stitch into that chain 3, and we're going to work that decrease the same way from this side by turning our work, slip stitch into each stitch, the end here, slip stitch into that chain 3. And then for row 48, we're going to decrease another block. So we will only be working 4 blocks for this row. So chain 3, 3 double crochets, slip stitch, chain 3, 3 double crochets, slip stitch, chain 3, 3 double crochets, slip stitch, chain 3, 3 double crochets, and then slip stitch here. I've worked 4 blocks, so we know we want to turn and work the next row. So slip stitch into the ends, slip stitch into your chain 3. We're going to decrease by another block again, so we will only be working 3 for this row. Chaining 3, 3 double crochets, and this is how you work your decrease until your scarf is completely closed in, decreasing by 1 block for every row until your last one, which will have just the 1 block. So continue on decreasing in this same fashion until you have completely closed in your scarf. So I'm on my last row. I will only have 1 block left. Chain 3, 3 double crochets, slip stitch to that chain 3, and you have finished the main body of your scarf. Now we're ready to go ahead and make the unicorn head. This is the graph that we will use for the toddler size. And you can see that it looks a little bit different than my previous graph, where these blocks are white these are empty. So we will be crocheting up to here and stopping. And so these are like half squares, and I'm going to show you how to do those half squares. But essentially we start exactly the same as we do any corner to corner project by chaining 6 and then working that first block. And then we're going to be working those 6 rows exactly the same as the first 6 rows of the scarf. So go ahead and complete row 6, and when I come back I'll show you how to do that half square. We've completed row 6, working that exactly the same as we did for a regular corner to corner technique. And now that we have completed that 6th row, we're going to come back through here and we're going to work and close these steps off, creating a diagonal line. So after you've completed row 6, you're going to turn your work just as you would when you stop increasing and slip stitch into the end of each of these stitches, and also then into your chain 3, just as you normally would. The difference now is instead of chaining 3, you're going to work 3 double crochets in the corner of this step. So go ahead and just work a double crochet, and you're going to be working a double crochet in this corner stitch right here. So 1, 2, 3, slip stitch to the chain 3 above that next block to attach it. Then we're going to do the same thing here, 3 double crochets in that corner. So 1, 2, 3, slip stitch into that chain 3, then 3 double crochets in that corner. Slip stitch into that next chain 3, 3 double crochets in that corner, slip stitch, 3 double crochets into that corner, slip stitch to that last block, and go ahead and fasten off at this point, and you have completed the unicorn head. And see how that just creates this nice diagonal line that closes that off and creates this unicorn head shape. So when I come back, I will show you how to sew this to your scarf. To sew that head to your scarf, I've left a long tail for sewing here when I fastened off. And basically we're just going to line up the edge. The diagonal is here, and then we have our 90-degree here at the bottom. And this is my beginning of the scarf. So this is where I started the scarf, and so this is where the horse head is going to go. The bottom, or the last part of the scarf, is the other side of the horse's head. So when you match up the bottoms of the scarf, you can see where you're going to have the mane. It stair steps down like this. So that's how you know where the unicorn head is going to be. So line those up, and we are just going to do a very simple seam here. First, we want to get that yarn where it needs to be. up here at the top, and then just do a simple like mattress seam stitch back and forth. And just continue that down. Till the bottom of the head. Now we're ready to make the horn for the unicorn. We're going to make 2 of these. So with your yellow, chain 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4, single crochet in the second chain from the hook, and then in each chain to the end. Turn, single crochet after chaining 1, single crochet in the same stitch and in each stitch to the end. Turn, chain 1. We're going to single crochet decrease over the first 2 stitches. So inserting your hook, yarning over, pulling up a loop, inserting your hook into the next stitch, yarning over, pulling up a loop, yarning over, pulling through all 3 loops, and then single crochet in the last stitch. Turn, chain 1, single crochet in both of those stitches. And then we're going to repeat that row. Turn, chain 1, single crochet in both of those stitches. Turn, chain 1, single crochet, decrease over those 2 stitches. Turn, chain 1 and single crochet in that stitch. So that's all there is to it for that horn. Just repeat those instructions for a second one, and we'll sew those together and sew those onto our scarf. So with both of those pieces, go ahead and stick those together. We're going to sew these closed, and I'm going to sew them on both sides down to about here or so. I want to leave the bottom portion open just a little bit so that I can stick that on top of the unicorn head and then finish sewing it onto the head that way. So with just one of these long ends, just simply sew it shut. Down to about here. So that leaves a little bit open here at the bottom, and then go ahead and repeat that on the other side. We're now ready to sew the horn to the top of the unicorn's head. So just place it probably an inch or so down from the top of the head here and place it over top of that square here. And then you're just going to sew through all the thicknesses and attach it firmly. And that should do it. It's nice and firmly attached, won't come off. It's looking like a unicorn now. So go ahead and fasten off these ends and weave them in. And next up will be our eye and eyelashes. For the eye, we need our black here. We're going to make a magic circle. And work 6 single crochets in that magic circle. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, pull that shut, and then slip stitching to that first one to close. We're gonna sew that on. I left a long tail to sew that on and to create my eyelashes. Place the eye where you think it looks good to you. And I use one of the long tails for sewing it and attaching it, and then the other one to create the eyelashes. So just go ahead and sew that on. All right, so once that's sewn on, we can create our eyelashes here. And I did that just by coming up a little ways, half an inch or so, and putting my needle down, which then creates that eyelash. Come back up underneath, a little bit over. Put your needle back down. Come back up a little bit over. Don't pull too tightly on these. You don't want to bunch up your piece. And then down one more time. Okay, so I've created those eyelashes. Go ahead and weave in your end, and we'll be ready for fringe. My unicorn is now ready for his main fringe. And for mine, I am using 4 different colors. You can use more than that, less than that. For the size of your fringe, I am going with a 6-inch fringe. So grab yourself a book or a sturdy piece of cardboard. The colors you want to use, you're going to then just loosely wrap those colors around your book or your cardboard and make your fringe. If you would like a more comprehensive tutorial on how to do fringe, I do have a video on YouTube that will help with that as well. But just wrap. I use 8 strands per fringe piece. So I'm just going to do it in a few batches here, and I'm just going to show you simply how to do this. So then just cut here at the bottom to make your fringe. And then your unicorn. So I attach mine from the top down. You can do what you like, what looks good to you, but this is how I've been adding my fringe on. Take your pieces of fringe I'm using 8 strands, so 2 strands of each color for each fringe here. I grabbed a bigger hook because it's a little bit easier to add that fringe with a bigger hook. And where you're going to be adding it on this side of the scarf is on top of that white box all along here. We're going to be adding a fringe. And I'm going to be doing it because it's easier on this side. I'm going to be attaching it around that double crochet just above the white cluster there. So insert your hook in there. You're going to wrap your yarn around the hook. Pull that through and up. You're going to take that loop and pull through and then just gently tug. Until it's snug up against the scarf. And then you'll come back through and do any trimming that you need to do when you're finished. So grab another 8. Make sure they're basically even with each other. That will help with trimming. Insert your hook around that post. Pull those through and up. And then tug until they're all snugly against your scarf. And it is as simple as that. Continue on down here. Now when you finish, so you're going to continue on down here. When you finish, the other side of your scarf comes around like this and matches up. And so you will just continue adding fringe all along this side. So just make sure that when you're adding that fringe, it is in a place that makes sense for you. It's easier to work. Find a post that's easy to work around to add that fringe, whether that be the bottom one of the main body of the scarf here, or if it's the top one of the white for the unicorn. Whichever one is easier for you to work your fringe around, that's what you're going to do. So just continue on with your fringe until you have that completed. Trim it as needed, but that's all for my unicorn scarf. This is a fun, whimsical pattern that I'm sure your kids, grandkids, and even those of you who are young at heart that love unicorns will enjoy wearing in the cold weather. So I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial today. If you have, please subscribe to my YouTube channel so you can get notified whenever I post a new video. If you share any of your projects on social media, hashtag Nana's Crafty Home so that I can see your amazing projects. I love to see your work and all of the creative ways that you use my patterns. Also, remember to follow me on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, Twitter, and Tumblr. So lots of places to follow me. I share different things on different platforms, so you get to see sneak peeks in different places. So I am excited to see you all there. Take care. Bye-bye.